What's up, y'all? It's me. It's your boy Asmongold, and today we're gonna look at the Warrior Best in Slot for Challenge Mode and Proving Grounds. And this was actually originally not even going to be a video, but I couldn't really find a place to host the image that would not downscale it enough to where it wouldn't be readable. And so I'm just going to kind of go through this, and I'll just scroll down and kind of show you guys what we're going to go over. We're just going to go over like pretty much for every slot what the best item and like a couple of other pretty easy items to get are. And as you can see, I have every slot and talents and then some stat priorities. And so we're going to start with the helmet here, and I'm not really used to doing things with desktop recording, so we will just bear with me here. For the helmet, the best helmet is pretty much going to be the Thok helmet, and the way that I have kind of ranked them is overall DPS. And so basically because critical strike and mastery are the two best stats for warriors, and crit is the best stat, basically any item with critical strike and mastery and the correct amount of sockets is going to be the best item. And so that's kind of how I rank them. In terms of how you want to do your hit and expertise, that's kind of up to you, and that's why I've gotten these other options also. And so maybe for you, the voice amplifying great helm might actually be the best item, but for pure DPS, the Thok helmet is the best. And so anyway, the Thok helmet obviously it's a tier helmet for the Siege of Orgrimmar tier set, and it drops from Thok. The next item that you can get is a voice amplifying great helm, and what's good about this is that it's only 2,000 justice points, and so you spend, I don't know, like a half hour doing heroics and you've got this helmet, and it's not even a big deal. I don't think there's a rep requirement to it or anything. It does also give crit and expertise, and so if you are able to utilize that expertise completely, this is probably going to be the best helmet, although it does give a crit bonus and a blue socket instead of the Thok helmet, which gives a red socket and a strength bonus, which is slightly better. The engineering helmet is also a good choice because you can put in a crit gem and a mastery gem, and it also has room for a meta socket, and it also gives you a socket for 180 strength, but you can only get that as engineering. A very easy item to get is the Nullification Great Helm, and that drops from Fang, as you can see, and that gives crit and haste. Haste is not really your best stat, but it's still a pretty good stat. You know, I don't know, just overall, it's not really that terrible, especially considering you can reforge out of it. And if you can't get any of those, you can always get the Grievous Gladiator's helmet, or any PvP helmet, because it's all, as you can see here, I've scaled down every single item to 463, and so you can do a direct comparison of the best and worst items for each slot, exactly how they'll be in challenge modes. So for the necklace, the best neck, far and away, is the Tordos necklace, and the reason that's the best necklace is it has a socket in it, and it gives hit and crit. And so assuming that you can utilize that hit rating, and even if you can't, it's probably still going to be a lot better. As you can see, nothing else, you get over 300 more crit, probably 400 maybe with the socket bonus. You get so much more crit rating if you're able to use this necklace. So this is definitely an item that you want to be looking at. The Malkrok and Council necks are pretty much the same. The Malkrok one is slightly better because it has more crit, and the Council one from TOT is not quite as good because it has more mastery than crit. And if you can't get either one of those, you can just get this critical strike and expertise necklace. And I didn't really put anything else on here because if you can get a PvP item, I'm not going to put anything that's really worse than that, because PvP items are very easy to get, especially considering you can just spend honor for them. And I put like my little tips over here, and one of them obviously is that, well, you want to always do challenge modes as arms. I think I had that, I guess it must be somewhere down there. You always want to do challenge modes as arms because the way that arms scales with gear is not that great, but as soon as at 463 item level, it's much better than Fury because you don't have the critical strike rating to keep up your raging blows, and you're enraged for Fury. So you always want to be arms, and make sure that you always blade storm with sweeping strikes because it makes your blade storm do more damage. For the shoulders, the best shoulders in the game are the Tusks of Manoroth. You're not getting these, don't worry about them. The real shoulders that are the best, that you might actually have a chance of getting, are the Garrosh shoulders. Though these both drop from Garrosh, are the Garrosh shoulders, and what makes them very good is they have 2 yellow sockets, and a strength bonus, and so you put 2 crit gems in there, and it also has 422 crit. It's very well allocated item, and you want to be focusing on getting that. If you can't get that, you can always go ahead and get the TOT tier shoulders from Iron, and again they have pretty good gems and a good bonus in them, but they do not have any crit rating. So you really want to be focusing on trying to get these shoulders from Garrosh. And there are other shoulders that are better, that have crit on them, but they do not have 2 sockets, and so you want to make sure you have 2 sockets on your shoulders. The Siege of Orgrimmar shoulders are also pretty good, and they give the same bonuses as the TOT, and the reason I ranked the Siege of Orgrimmar ones a little bit lower is because they gave less mastery, but they're really basically the same thing. Either one, they're pretty much interchangeable. The Ordo shoulders are also a possibility, but as you can see, they are more of a DK shoulder item. And then if you can't get any of those, the shoulders from Amber Shaper are probably going to be your best bet because they're very easy to get. And you can also get the shoulders from Tordos. But you want to really be focusing on trying to get a 2-socket shoulder item. Even if it's one of these, it's probably going to be better than this one here, just because you can put 2 very large crit gems in there. And okay, for the cloak, for whatever reason I forgot to switch these. I don't really know why. Just for your information, this item actually is better than a legendary cloak because it gives more critical strike rating, and assuming that you can utilize the expertise, it's going to be better. But they're very close match, and so honestly, if you have either one of them, you're going to be fine. And this actually drops from Primordius, and so it's also very easy to get. This cloak is from Rodin, and it does have crit, and it does have a socket in it, and so these 3 cloaks are the only cloaks in game that have a socket in them, and they have crit on them, I think. And so you want to make sure that you have one of these 3. Even though this has haste, it is better than the expertise and crit one. But if you can't seem to get one of these, I mean, the Primordius and Rodin are kind of hard to... Rodin is very hard to get, and obviously you can't just go get the legendary quest cloak. And so if you can't get any of those, the Fang cloak is a very good choice because it gives critical strike and expertise. And there's also a Siege of Orgrimmar trash drop that you can get that's pretty much the same thing. Safeguard is a very good thing that you want to use for your tank. You can also use it with Die by the Sword if it's against a very hard-hitting mob. And Safeguard you can use on a 30-second cooldown, and it reduces your tank's incoming damage by 20% for 6 seconds. It's basically a lot better than Vigilance, assuming that you can take the hits, and it also can move you out of roots and all kinds of other stuff. So make sure that you do that. And during periods of like very heavy damage, like let's say Rattlegore for challenge modes, you want to do it with Die by the Sword up so Rattlegore doesn't one-shot you. For the chest piece, the best chest piece is the chest piece from the Dark Shamans in Siege of Orgrimmar, and a very close competitor is the Ordos chest, Hoodrich's bloodied chest piece. Either one of these are very good choices, and I think that the Dark Shaman one is a little bit better because of the gems that it allows you to use, because if you have to use the Hoodrich's one, you have to make sure that you can either miss the socket bonus or you have to use 2 hit gems, and that could be problematic depending on where you're at. And so these are basically the same, and this one could possibly be better if you're able to utilize the hit rating here. The Rodin shoulders are also, or chest, is also very good, but obviously it's from Rodin, so it's very hard to get. It has 3 sockets and critical strike rating, and the Rodin one, Ordos one, and Dark Shaman's ones are the only chest pieces that have 3 sockets in them, and they have critical strike rating passively on them, and so that's going to make them your best choices for challenge modes. If you can't get your hands on one of those, there's also some other possibilities, which is the Shaw of Pride, Siege of Orgrimmar drop, which is the tier shoulders, and obviously that's 3 red sockets, and it has mastery on it. Haste isn't that great, but it's better than nothing. The Dark Animus shoulders or chest is is also pretty decent. It's not really all that great. Honestly, it's not really that much better than the Garrelon shoulders. Honestly, the Garrelon shoulders could possibly be better, but I don't really think that they are, because they only have 2 sockets. And anyway, so you want to make sure that you can at least get a 3-socket chest piece, and both of the newer tier chests and these other chests that I had already spoken about have those, and so it's not really that hard to get. And alright, we will go down to risks. This is like a hypothetical here. A lot of these are hypotheticals. You might be able to get 1 or 2 pieces, but good luck trying to get every single one of these best in slot items. Darumu drops random enchant bracers. If you can get these random enchant bracers with critical strike rating on them, they're the best bracers in the game for challenge modes, because they have passive crit rating, and they also have a socket, and they're the only shoulders in the game that have a natural socket. And so obviously if you're blacksmithing, you can put another socket on there and get like 2000 crit or something like that from your bracers alone, and nothing else can really match that in the game. But if you can't get those, and you probably can't, it's very rare that you'll be able to get those. I mean, obviously it's a chance on a chance because it's random enchant. You can also get the Nourishing bracers, and those also will give you critical strike and mastery, but they do not have a socket on them. But they're definitely a close or not really a close second, but they're your next best choice. And if you can't get those, you can get the Shandowpan Assault Rep, and it's from Friendly, and so you can get Friendly with the Shandowpan very easily. If you just do TOT once, it will give you Friendly, and you can go ahead and buy these bracers for Valor points. It's very cheap. I think it's like 700 Valor. I didn't note it down here. And if you can't get those, you can even get these bracers that are for Justice points, and so way even easier. And they have crit and expertise, and so this is not really that bad of a choice. Braided black and white bracer. The PvP bracers are also not that bad of a choice. As you can see, they also give critical strike and expertise, but the braided black bracers are slightly better because they give more critical strike. And the Iron Juggernaut bracers are probably the last one, because I mean, if you can get the Iron Juggernaut bracers, you can probably get these 2 anyway. So I don't really even know why I put those on there. But if you have those, they're not really that great, but you know, they're obviously a choice because they have crit. That kind of speaks for itself. The spell reflecting casts, some examples for that are in Scarlet Halls. The mobs that after you go through the gauntlet after the first boss, they will cast Holy Fire, and you can spell reflect that. That's 300,000 damage that Holy Fire does. And then also on top of Holy Fire, I think there are mobs in the other Purifying Flame and Scarlet Monastery. There are quite a few casts that you can spell reflect, and if they're not cast on you, you can obviously use mass spell reflect also. And so also you want to make sure that you always heroic leap for extra damage. This is especially important for AoE packs, because heroic leap, I think it has like an AoE cap, but obviously AoE cap is like 20, and so you can heroic leap in between like sweeping strikes and like thunderclap and everything, and it will really increase your damage by a lot. For bosses, it's not really that important, but especially for very large bosses like the last boss in Gate of the Setting Sun, Raigon, you can use it for him, and it will actually help you a lot, and you'll never go out of range and miss a melee. So for the gloves, the best gloves are the General Nazgrim Siege of Orgrimmar tier gloves, and the reason for that is they have natural crit and a very large amount of it, on top of 2 sockets and hit rating. So assuming you can utilize the hit rating, these are perfect stats for you. And 2 red sockets, so that means you can basically add pure DPS stats without having to mess with your crit and expertise and hit. These are much better than any other gloves, but there are other possibilities. The Ironclaw gloves are also good because they have 2 sockets and natural crit, but they have haste. The Iron Juggernaut gloves, pretty much the same place, not quite as good. As you can see, a little bit less crit, but you know, because this is a blue socket, these kind of are even depending on what you need and what you don't need. The PvP gloves, you can also use these. These 3 gloves are the only three gloves that have natural crit with 2 sockets on them. And so if you can get one of these three, you're obviously going to be in the best place possible. But if you can't, the PvP gloves are also not that bad because they give a socket bonus of strength instead of PvP power, and they give natural crit as well as hit rating. For your belt, the Rod-In belt is the best belt in the game because it gives you critical strike and mastery. It gives you a lot of crit with 2 sockets. It's kind of annoying that it's blue sockets, but assuming you can utilize them, they'll be very good. And luckily, the second best belt is the blacksmithing belt, and so you can just use this. You can go buy it. It's like, I don't know, like 6,000 gold or something like that, and it has 2 red sockets. And so both of these choices are very good, and there's actually quite a few good choices for belts. There's these 3, and Vizier Zorlok is very easy to kill, obviously, because he's the first boss in LFR, and LFR is just as good as Heroic, by the way, because everything's scaled down to 463. And it has 2 sockets as well as critical strike and expertise. But as you can see, these 2 belts have much more critical strike, and this also has a blue socket, so it's not quite as good. And if you can't get that, you can also get the Dark Shaman's belt, which has hit and mastery, which is not amazing, but it does have 2 sockets in it naturally. And so it will be a 3-socket belt. You always want to make sure you have a 3-socket belt for those 3 big crit gems, or, you know, maybe if you're not able to meet that, but, you know, something else. Anyway, then you can also get the Shadowpen Assault belt, and it only does have one gem slot, and so it's definitely not even close to as good as these 2. But if you don't really have the money to buy this, and you don't have the time to do Rod-In, which I'm sure most people don't, I don't even have this belt, then the Shadowpen Assault belt is definitely a good, I don't know, like 5th best. But, you know, if you have a time, you should try and switch out your Blade Storm and your Bloodbath, because you always want to use Blade Storm and Bloodbath on pretty much everything. But if you have time, if you can switch a Stormbolt for Bloodbath, you are going to do a lot more damage to bosses, because Stormbolt does 500% damage to unstunnable targets. And so if you can do a quick switch and before a boss, you're probably going to increase your single target damage by kind of a lot. Your leggings, the best leggings in the game are the Malkrok leggings, because they give critical strike and mastery as well as 3 sockets. Period. That's it. The blacksmithing leggings are also very good. They're pretty much tied with the Lei Shen leggings, because although the Lei Shen leggings have 3 sockets and more critical strike, they do have haste, which is not very good, but the blacksmithing leggings do have mastery and crit and 2 red sockets. And so you really want to focus on getting one of these 3 leggings, because obviously these 2 are 3-socket leggings, and this one has very good stats on it already, and so it allows you to pretty much get your other stats from other pieces, and it allows, you know, other choices. But if you can't get one of those, the Lake Plates from Ordos are also a possibility, even though Ordos is kind of like, I mean, there's like a million things you can get from him, so you're probably not going to get the right item you want, but if you end up having these, they're not that bad of a choice. The TOT tier leggings from Ji-Kun are also not really that bad of a choice, because they do give crit and mastery. The only negative with these leggings is that they only have 2 sockets, and so that does kind of suck. And as you can see, I mean, these are actually, I don't really know why I had these before. These Ji-Kun leggings are actually significantly better than the Ordos leggings. I guess I'll have to switch that. Anyway, and if you can't get any of these, if you have bad luck or whatever, you can always get the PvP leggings, and what's good about those is they do have 600 crit naturally, as well as 2 sockets, but unfortunately the socket bonus is PvP power, so I would suggest just jamming straight crit. What is this? Yeah, always do challenge modes as arms. As I said before, challenge modes are, obviously you scale all your gear down, and arms is very good now, especially because you spend a lot of time doing AoE, and what's better than AoE than fucking Blade Storm and 65% buffed deep wounds? Like, it's amazing. So arms is definitely the way to go for challenge modes. For your boots, the far and away the best boots are the Rod-In boots, because they're the only boots in the game for warriors that have 2 sockets, as far as I know. So you want to make sure that you can get these boots from Rod-In. If you can't get the boots from Rod-In, luckily the next best choice is a blue from last watch of Siege of Nizal, the Wing Leader Naronok. And obviously you can see these have very high critical strike rating as well as expertise with a red socket that gives strength. And so this is easily a very, very good item that you can use. And so you might as well try and get these. But if for whatever reason you don't want to go and do that, or you have one of these other items, these are all other good choices that you can use that are not really that bad either. There's the Tidal Force Treads from the Twin Consorts, and those give natural crit. Actually, yeah, all these do give natural crit. And so you can even get the PvP boots. And what's good about those is that they obviously have crit and mastery, so those are your two best stats, but the problem is that the socket is only PvP power, and so that's kind of a negative. For rings, you want to get a ring with a socket in it, but if you can't get a ring with a socket in it, it's not really that big of a deal. The Spoils of Pandaria, the chest event in Siege of Orgrimmar, is the best ring in the game right now, because it gives passive crit and a socket, and so obviously this is going to be your best item that you can get. Unfortunately, it does have haste, but if you can't get that, you can also get the Dark Shamans or the Thok ring, and basically you want to decide which one you want based on if you need more hit or more expertise. But the Dark Shamans ones is a little bit better because you can put a straight crit gem in it. You can also get the Fallen Protectors ring because that gives hit and crit. And you could also get the Majera ring, which is basically the same thing, except for it gives a little bit less crit and a little bit more hit. And this is pretty much obvious. Example for this is in Scarlet Halls, the Scourge Hewers, the guys that are two-handed using the axe. Was it the Draconic Cleaver that drops from BWL Trash? Those obviously do a lot of very high front-end physical damage, and if you could disarm those, that's going to lower your tank's incoming damage by a lot. And basically any other mob in challenge modes that is a two-handed mob that swings slowly is going to be a very good potential target to disarm, and so you always want to do that if you can, because it doesn't cost anything. You don't really lose anything except for 1 GCD, so it's not really that big of a deal, especially if you only have an overpower to use. For your trinket, I didn't really include a lot of trinkets because the trinkets that I have here are very easy to get. The Darkmoon Fair trinket is the best trinket, so you want to have that. The Will of the Emperor trinket is also extremely good, even though it has haste, and the reason for that is because it has such a small ICD, and it has a 20-second strength buff. It's very huge, and so that's really great. This 750 Justice Points thing, this is actually from the, what's it called, like the new faction that was added in like 5.1, the Offensive or whatever, and this is the Alliance one, but there is a Horde alternative that's just equal to it. And what's really great about this is it has a use with Critical Strike, and 1 minute, that means it will line up with your Bloodbath and Bladestorm, and so that's also really great to have. If you can't get either of those, you can use this Carbonic Carbuncle, which is really also great because it gives very high Critical Strike bonus, but it does have kind of a long ICD, but the bonus lasts for 30 seconds. So any of these four are definitely going to be great, but I would personally use these two. For your weapon, the reason the TOT weapons are the best, as I covered this in my other videos, you can put sockets in them, and they're the only weapons in the game that already have sockets built into them also. A lot of the original Panda raid weapons do not. And so the best axe is the Uro Harbinger of Terror, and the reason that is obviously gives very high crit rating and mastery and a gem slot that gives strength. It's fucking awesome. You want to have that. But if you can't have that, the Council Sword from TOT is also not that bad, but as you can see, it doesn't really give that much crit, but it does give a lot of hit rating, and so if you can use it, then that's great, but if not, you probably want to try and get the Wei Shen one. This is TOT Random Boss Loot. You're probably never going to see this item. I was lucky enough to get it during TOT, but other than that, good luck trying to actually get this thing. But if you do, it's pretty good. It has crit naturally, and a socket, and a yellow socket, so you can put a crit gem into it, and has socket bonus of strength, but it does have haste, so it's kind of negative. Besides that, the Shrinka, Execution of Dominion from Shaw of Fear, the reason why that's so good is because, as you can see, it has very, very high critical strike and mastery, ratings, and also has more strength than other items because it doesn't have a socket built into it, but you can put a socket into it, but the shot touch gem doesn't work. And so in between these two, I forgot to mention this, but the heirloom axe from Garrosh, if you have it, is better than the Garrosh normal weapon, but it's not better than the Shah of Fear weapon. And that's because it has 2 sockets built into it. You can't put another socket into it, and it also has, I think it has crit and haste, but the extra socket makes up for the haste rating. And if you can't get any of those, the Gorhal weapon is not really that bad either, just because it has crit and mastery, but you can only have 1 socket in it, so that's not really bad. I put that for motivation. You can do it. It's actually really not that hard. So talents and glyphs, well, let me zoom out a little bit here. Damn it, I don't really like using this program. Anyway, so Juggernaut is the best because you can obviously do the most charges per, I don't know, like second, and also you can get as much rage as possible. Warbringer and double time, like double time I guess is useful in like some kind of weird circumstance. Warbringer pretty much sucks. Second wind obviously is going to be the best just for whatever purpose. None of these really matter. Disrupting Shout is very important for an AoE interrupt, especially for like big groups of casters like in Scarlet Halls and Scarlet Monastery and let me think. Oh, Siege of Nizhao Temple, the first 2 pulls. And so Disrupting Shout's great. You obviously want to use Blade Storm. Shockwave and Dragon's Roar aren't really that great. You should have stuns from other people in your group, so you don't really have to use Shockwave. Mass Spell Reflect and Safeguard are both good choices. Vigilance is not really that great, but you can Safeguard if you have a very good healer and you're not in danger of dying, and Mass Spell Reflect is good just for reducing damage on the tank and damage on the raid in general. Bloodbath is going to be your best talent, especially with Bladestorm. If you're ever using Bladestorm and you're doing AoE, you want Bloodbath. If you're ever doing a straight single target fight, you can use Stormbolt. Dragon's Roar is technically better than Bladestorm on single target, but usually just the way it lines up, because you can't change your cooldowns while they're on. You can't change your talents while they're on cooldown. You probably just want to stick with Bladestorm just by the way it works. For your glyphs here, you want to have the Glyph of Resounding Power. I forgot what it's actually specifically called, and what that does is it makes your Thunderclap. It makes your Thunderclap 50% longer, like the cooldown for it, 50% longer. It makes it a 9-minute cooldown, but it also makes it do more damage. And this is good just because you can do 1 hit of it, and then you can go right back into slamming with your Sleeping Strikes up and doing, you know, awesome cleave damage. Glyph of Sleeping Strikes is great because every single time that you hit something with Sleeping Strikes, you gain 1 rage. And so obviously that's just going to pretty much purely increase your damage because you've got Sleeping Strikes up all the time. Glyph of Death from Above is also very good because obviously you want to be doing as many heroic leaps into the AoE packs as possible. Your minor glyphs don't really matter. Your stat priorities are, you want to make sure you have your hit rating and expertise to 7.5%, and then crit, mastery, and haste. And other than that, I hope to soon be able to do a guide showing how to do each individual dungeon very precisely and correctly. But until then, I will probably maybe do one more challenge mode guide until I do that. Anyway, thank you for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.